And I think I talked about it in one of these meetings where Sally, she's like the owner of Fairy Dust Teaching, and it's all the loose parts ratio stuff. She was doing an online boot camp where she was teaching people how to use Zoom, Google Classroom, and how you could use it effectively with young children. And it was $27. So I signed up, and then that's how. So now I keep getting emails about all these things they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. I remember you talking about boot camps, but yeah. Okay. Good.
So Julie, I'm just adding because a few people have joined us, Christy and Jen and Jennifer and Sarah and Shelley. And as they came into the conversation, I was just putting in chat what you were talking about. So, and just so that I'm sure, right? So this is the Play First Summit.
Yes, it's called the Play First Summit. And it's through Fairy Dust Teaching.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we had someone, I think it was Shelley. Shelley, weren't you the one who introduced us to Sally Hoggy? Is that her name?
That wasn't me.
Okay. But it was like that $47, maybe Sarah, but it was like the $47 to the boot camp.
That was me. Yeah, it was 27 if you registered early, and then 47 later. And that's the same with this. It was like, because I got the emails, I got to get in on the bottom. So I paid 27 and now it's 47.
Okay. And and the boot camp, I know one thing that you said, Julia, was the nice thing is like that she had touched on a variety of technologies.
Yes. So something for everyone, hopefully. And she does it where she's a teacher, and then there's somebody, a student, so you get that viewpoint, and then the opposite way too, like, so you can see what the other person's seeing, so you kind of get a good feel for what your students are seeing.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And is she a early childhood teacher?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Good. As I've been dabbling in technology and in learning sciences and sort of, coming to these edges of education researchers and technology researchers, I see people who are technology people who apply their stuff to families and children who don't necessarily know that much about families and children, but are kind of learning as they're going. And then people who are in education who are working with parents, but they're not really parenting educator, and so I especially appreciate it when there are folks who sort of come from our own perspective with our own background and training, and then are applying what we're learning about these technologies. And it's a little more practical. Oh, good. And so Sarah, I see, Sarah, you've shared a link.
I've shared a link. The Harvard Graduate School of Ed is doing a webinar tomorrow called What Reopening Means for Early Education.
Do you mind if I share that with everyone?
Please do. It's Wednesday, July 22nd at 3 Eastern.
Okay.
So they're a great resource. I've done a couple of their webinars. They can be a little cerebral. But this one just hits the mark in so many ways. I think I'll join and see what it's like.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, great. It's lovely to see you all. What a great way to begin, sharing resources and training and ideas. So again, welcome to our little connections thing. And then again, letting everybody know, and you all are veterans. I think might be the first time we've had everybody come back who has been on one of our talks at least once. So then you all know that you're being recorded. And again, the video recordings seem to be very popular. And I think especially in the summertime, where people are traveling and that kind of thing, being able to then listen in on our conversations, and hear the ideas, and especially hear the shared emotions and that sort of thing. So when we left off last week, and Karen reminded me that she was the one who had prompted the question, because we had a great conversation last week about ourselves as professionals and our feelings about returning to the fall, and certainly that's not a conversation that is done. It's always evolving. But Karen had brought up about what about the parents, you know, that we work with, and how will we, or how are we helping them manage and understand their feelings about this. And my direct students, of course, are undergraduates and graduate students. But I have to say that my own observation from the spring was that the mechanics of teaching was not my problem. I mean, it was not the challenge that I faced, because I felt as a professional that I felt pretty comfortable with what I was going to teach, how I was going to teach, or how I could problem solve how I was going to teach. My greater burden in the springtime was feeling the emotions of my students and feeling the emotional weight of their own managing this new thing of their own family lives and being at home and trying to balance their work and their children and their marriages, their larger extended families, all of these things in a new way. And then sort of checking in on a week by week basis, and, you know, and seeing absolute amazing resilience, but also, the students were lovely because they were so honest and would just say, I'm an absolute mess, you know? And so, so I just want to let you know that, you know, even though you all are sort of my direct service folks, that understanding about feelings of our learners and the folks that we work with is pretty universal. So I think it's an absolutely wonderful question, Karen, and I'm really happy that you brought it up. So I am just going to stop talking and then just open it up. And Karen, if you want to rephrase the question, if I've missed something, or if somebody just wants to just jump in and respond. So how are you feeling, or how are you reacting or thinking you're going to react to helping parents with their own feelings about the fall and back to school?
It seems like there will be a process. I mean, it's going to be a lot of processing information. In a meeting earlier this week, I talked with some of our staff about, for me, I think I need to call whoever ends up in my classes. I think I need to call and make sure I touch base with them one-on-one, just to see how they're doing. But my question to the group is, if you were to make that call, what would you ask? What questions would you ask? What kind of foundation would you lay down? Okay, I'm going mute. Go.
I'll jump in. This spring I had on my survey to families, I said, hey y'all, this distance learning thing was really hard. And I need to know, how was the balance of parent ed time? Because I didn't feel like I could just dive right into a topic without checking in one-to-one. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And I felt like the first 2-3 weeks of shutdown, that was really important because everybody had so many feelings and they had so much going on, and their older kids were distance learning. But as the weeks went on, some groups really still needed that check-in more than they needed to talk about their kids, especially the groups that have been together longer, especially the groups where the child they were enrolled with was their youngest child. Whereas my toddler groups were like, let's talk about all the things. So I think to answer your question, Karen, I would ask families, what are you looking for in this class? Are you looking to vent? Because some venting does need to occur before your brain can be ready for processing and learning and new information. How much check-in time do you guys want? Do you want no check-in? I struggle with the no check-in time, but some of the issues that our families are dealing with are so big, you guys. But it's really hard. It's really hard to cut off, for lack of a better word, a parent who's going and going and going and going when they're on Zoom. And so, but really asking, how much time do you want to share with other people? How much time do you want to spend on a topic? How much time do you want to spend on, just I think that's what I would ask. And then I would take that class and say, okay, this group really doesn't want to talk about COVID. They want to think about other things. And then I create a completely different system for that group.
Thank you. I have a thumbs up and you can't see it.
I love that idea. I'm curious though, I find myself always in a class where half the families have been there, done that, for lack of a better word. And then I have a few token families that have signed up for this group and it's their first and they're really looking for that. And then where is that balance? And I think, like you said, doing it on Zoom can sometimes take away that ability to read the room and cut them off if needed. Not to mention their kids are listening, which is a whole nother realm of complicated stuff.
I'm wondering about actually just asking that question on the phone call so that you have that information through the parent expressing their feelings. And I realize it's the first time you're calling them, but they are signing up for a class. They are going to venture out or whatever form the class takes. The fall just brings all these brand new transitions and changes. And, how are you feeling about this transition into fall? Or tell me what's happening in your family right now. We'd really like to match the class to what the needs are. I think you'd get some people spilling in that first phone call, and you get some other people thinking, how do I feel? What am I thinking? And you just generate some self-reflection for them, whether they shared it with you or not. So I don't know, you maybe just directly asking, there's some big changes going on. What's happening with you? I'm here to listen. Something like that. I don't know. I think this is a great question, Karen.
Thank you.
Karen, I also think that as the year starts, no matter what it's going to look like, especially if it's a Zoom or a Google Meet class, is just talking about that up front and being really honest with the group to start the class, and maybe reminding them each week that I really, I want to give you time to just talk and process, but I know that some of you also want a topic. And so, maybe the weeks change. Like if it ends up being, like I know you do this in your classes. If one week there's a lot of people just processing and you don't get to the topic, then maybe you start with the topic the next week and see how people feel about that.
So some fluidity according to the needs, which we do anyway. I just think this is my apprehensiveness. It's summer, so I'm just kind of like in summer mode. But I know coming back in the fall, it's going to be strong and intense. And it's being there and listening, because that's what we do and that's what we do well. It's bringing in some pieces, bits of wisdom or reflection. But it's also making sure we take time for ourselves and standing up and going for a walk or taking a breath, because we're going to get our heads full of this, just like we did in the spring. And so there's that self-care piece also. Those are just things I'm thinking of. And I want as much help with that as possible.
Well, Julia, you just put in the chat having the open office hours. I've been doing that, and it's going really. I only get 2 or 3 families each time, but I think that is a terrific thing that we should build into our fall, so that parents can, if they want to, continue talking about something. And then if it's, the time is going and I'm like, I got another class. Hey guys, I'm going to have an open office, but have it a standing time every week where you're always there so that parents always know, yeah, I'd like to dig more into this topic. And truth be told, they're always going to be, I've had parents stop in my office, tell me a big, long story. We work through some options together, and then they have class, and then they tell the big, whole long story again. Because they're looking, they really need that feedback. Not all, but some. So thank you for mentioning that, Julie. I think that's really important.
Ellen, would you walk through now, just because and I'm thinking about our home viewers and people who haven't maybe been on our calls before, when I know Melissa Schmidt from Albert Lee had brought up office hours. Would you just share with us, and anybody else who does office hours, just the mechanics? So Ellen, you were mentioning about having a standard time. And so, because I think that would be useful for any of us who are thinking of doing that, we haven't done it before. How do you do this virtually? How do you do this structurally? How do you do this as part of your day?
Yeah. So right now it's not a particular day or time. It's summer. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. We're, still running around. We want to go to the pool. Okay, great. When I know I'm going to be home from 1:30 to 2:30 or 1 to 2 on a Wednesday or a Thursday, I send out an email. So yesterday at 8 a.m., I said, hey guys, I'm going to be in my Zoom office today from 1:30 to 2:30. Stop in and talk about your kids, see some familiar faces, ask any questions. You can come for the whole time or just part of the time. And I've had now, over the course of this, 7 different families pop in. Some come more than once, but it's been 7 unique families. So that's been really, it's been really great. And sometimes they know each other and sometimes they don't. And so if someone pops on, 15 minutes in, I'm like, oh, hey everybody, I'm going to stop and introduce you to so-and-so. Do you guys know each other? Maybe you know each other from the library, because I live in a small town. But really I have not set like an actual day. Like I'm not going to do, it's always Wednesday at 1, because that doesn't always work for people. And then I also open up the option of saying, if this time doesn't work for you, let me know, and we can do a little quick 30-minute one-on-one. So it's kind of loosey-goosey and whenever I have time, but I feel like if I kind of change the day of the week, then I'll,
you'll meet different needs. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Ellen, when you say you send out an email, like who do you send an email out to?
I send it out to all of my ECFE families. And 75 is in my email list. But but when I do it, I send it out and I say, today we'll be talking about 2.5 to 5-year-olds, because that's how we break apart our classes. And then the next week I will do one for birth to 3. So those kiddos that are like 2 to 3 can pop into either one, depending on how those parents feel. But it helps keep the focus, because I don't want, the most I've ever had on a call is 4. And I don't want, a bunch of toddler families coming in and then, there's a ton of talk about school in the fall, so I'm trying to keep it a little bit separate.
Okay, good idea. Thank you.
I'm curious, who else is doing it? Anybody else doing it? I'm really interested how else it's going.
We haven't started it yet, but we just kind of started brainstorming some ideas on how we can just be the net, that's supporting these families through whatever comes this fall. And so we were just talking about on our schedule, just having these office hours in there where we'll be working or doing something else, but we'll have Zoom up. So we're hoping to schedule them, but at different times of the day and with our team. So even like I'm early childhood, even I would do it too. So then there would be enough of us to have a few of them. And maybe no one will come to a few of them, but we just wanted to make sure we, had enough spots to catch everybody, or as many as we can.
I did it too in the spring, and similar to what Ellen described, although I didn't have quite as many takers. When the ones who did join in, and I just opened Google Meet and sat there at my desk and waited to show up. And the ones who did show up had a pretty big. And I also offered times when I said I would be answering office hours. where people could schedule time with me, and I had people take advantage of that too. I did not go so far as Ellen to say, I mean, I think I did say like I could meet you at a mutually agreeable time, but I was pretty swamped and pretty protective in the interest of self-care of like doing too much beyond that. I don't think I ever like left somebody hanging though, to my knowledge. But I do think I like the idea that Ellen shared about narrowing the age of child during your office hours, because I support parents of a wide range of kids, and I think that might have contributed to the lack of participation, to have like a parent of an adolescent girl and a parent of a 4-year-old in the same realm. Although they can certainly have, that might not be what they're looking for. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I would not have done that during the school year. I was so fried. There was no way. I mean, I had 3 classes a day sometimes. Ooh, there were no open office hours during classes. So
yeah,
that is super important, because you got to take a break. You got to let your head filter it out.
My expertise isn't in helping people work through anxiety issues. And so I'm wondering if anybody has any insight on helping parents work through times if they're anxious about these things. Are there steps? Are there some concrete skills? Are there references, resources that I should be more aware of? I mean, I pulled a few things, but they're more in this, if you have a therapist mode, and I'm not a therapist, so just wondering.
I really love the Child Mind Institute resources.
Okay.
They do kind of bridge that coaching and information / more therapeutic stuff, I think, and they could be a great resource to send people to. They have great articles.
Thank you.
Some videos.
So I'm going through the Conscious Discipline book with 2 other coworkers this summer, and it is really helpful for me to remember what I can say again to parents to support them, and pausing and taking that breath and remembering that they are in brain states also, and just trying to be more cognizant of that. That's been really helpful for me this summer.
Great. So increase the awareness, self-awareness.
I spoke to the child psychologist, the one that works mostly with the teens at the ALC, and then the one who works with our early childhood kiddos. And I just said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. And she said, you know what? You don't have to help, Ellen. She said, just listen. So she sent me, and I copied it there. It's the Recovery Show. She sent me the list of neutral Al-Anon responses.
Oh, thank you.
And so, yeah, and it's everywhere I look, like it's just like it's like a scan of a page, and that's what's on there. But just to look at those, because saying, and I was like, this is really cheesy, but saying something like, that's, what do you think? I never thought of it that way. Just you're listening, because that's really what they want, is just to hear that you're listening.
So it's accountable talk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got that.
I had a family in my class in the spring. There were many tears. They had just moved here in the fall. We're missing their, there's a couple people here who I won't say too much because you might know who they are, but I remember just sitting there and saying, and I have no idea where it came from, but just saying, we're just going to be here with you right now.
Yep.
And you could just sort of feel, her relax into that moment where we were just going to feel with her. And then I think I told my colleagues about this question I asked, but I could sense that the tension was every week there was like big stuff, you know, and we had like this much time, you know. So I shared with my colleagues that I just said, what is it that you need someone to say to you right now? Just jot that down. What is it that you need somebody to say to you right now? And you know, they just want to know they're doing okay, that they're good for their kids, that they're important in their kids' lives and they're doing the best they can and they're doing a good job. Like that's what they all wanted to hear. So I said it to them, you know. It was a real turning point in our group.
Thank you.
I also think helping parents to remember who their support system is within their community, because sometimes I think you get so stressed, you forget that maybe you could text so-and-so or call so-and-so or, you know, and so helping them to process that again might be helpful.
Yep, good, thank you.
Mute myself. I have my daughter, Christy, I'm smiling when you say, what do you need to know here right now? Because my daughter in her anxious state will be very quick to tell me that what I'm telling her is not what she needs to hear.
Yes.
And so, which has actually pushed me many times to then ask her, you know, to really listen. I just posted a great listening thing because I like it because it's so reflective of what we do in our practice anyway, of creating safe spaces and that sort of thing. But I think truly listening to beyond the words in, you know, to the emotion and if it is necessary, if it's not evident in other ways, to simply ask the person, you know, what it is they need. And also the, you know, even those words of, you know, what can you do today? You know, like breaking things down into something simple, because there is so much going on and, you know, at all levels, that sometimes just knowing what's the next step I can take, what's the baby step, what can I do? I'm anxious about my children. What can you do about school? Or what can you do about your home? Or what can you do about your technology? What can you, you know, that can bring that sense of, okay, well, there at least is this, I have this person. And Deborah, I totally, as a social network person, I would totally reinforce what you're saying, is just reminding or asking people who else they have in their lives that they can turn to, and especially safe people. Because just because you have support doesn't mean that it's, you know, there's a whole thing about having negative support. And if it's just like, well, could you talk to your mother? It's just like, no, you know. So so helping them re-identify, like, who do you, you know, who beyond, you know, do you trust? And who do you feel safe with? You know, who else can you talk to about this? And I mean, it's something that you foster in all of your classes anyway, to help families build resources beyond the class. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's a great recognition about anxiety, and just finding out, for us as professionals, for us as people who care, you know, what are some simple ways that we can respond, edging up to that border of, but I'm not a therapist, right? And I don't want to take the place of other professionals in this person's possible life, but I also don't want them to feel ignored.
Exactly. So listening, supporting, resource, referral.
And I think also acknowledging that we are not equipped to fix the big, deep issues. And I was as soon as I was like, okay, this is not my, you know, not my circus, not my monkeys kind of thing. Like, these are my families and I am caring for them, but I cannot fix what I'm not trained to do. Mm-hmm. And accepting that was really hard for me.
I do think that the breathing and the mindfulness stuff, and I know the way that it is approached to people has, because some people, you know, using the word mindfulness can seem very, woo, you know, And but sort of putting that aside, and the deep breaths kind of thing of just like slowing down. And I do that with my students, my undergraduate students, before a test. And I can't tell you the number of kids that have thanked me for simply giving them a pause in their day to take a few breaths to calm themselves down before an event, you know? And so I do think that there's also sort of that physiological thing that we can do to simply remind people to take a few deep breaths, you know.
When you were talking about breaking things down a little bit, it just reminded me, and I think a lot of our families are going through trauma through all of this, you know, maybe that they have never experienced. But part of what I do is I work in a shelter, and I was seeing that a lot with those families where it's just like that anxiety all the time, and they just can't make decisions. So I created a super simple document, and it just said, what is your list one goal that you have? And so even if it's just to get my kid to eat breakfast or whatever it is like that, and then what are 3 steps you can take to get there? So it just kind of takes away all the other stuff and just makes them focus on one thing that's important instead of all this other stuff. And I feel like our families are going to be dealing with so much other stuff that, you know, maybe that might be one way to help them get a little clarity on not getting so overwhelmed all the time. I've seen it work with those families, and I feel like they've had a lot of anxiety. And I think that that's one thing I've seen in a lot of families in the spring is there was a lot of anxiety. So just breaking it down just to kind of support what you were just talking about.
So making it manageable.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. Well, I'm good. If you guys want to move on to a different topic, go ahead. So thank you very much.
I do have a different topic. I am just wondering about what other districts are doing with early childhood screening. We've got the guidelines from MDE, we've got the guidelines from NCEA, and so, but I'm just wondering if there's any other ideas that people have come up with or creative ways to deal with the early childhood screening.
Deborah, that may end up being a question to take to like Friends of Family Education. Are you on that? Are you on the Facebook group?
Oh, that's a good idea. I'm actually asking for our early childhood screening lead. She wasn't able to be here today, so I said I will try to at least throw it out there. But that's a really good idea. I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, because you know, I mean, it's not everybody, and certainly there are people here who are not, but it's at least it's a wider thing, and I've found people are pretty responsive, and you know, it's not exclusive to Parent Ed. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
One thing I wanted to we'll take a station break. I am setting up an email listserv for the Perfect Connections group, so that every time I send out reminders, I don't have to find an old email and copy and paste a bunch of emails. So if you get, you'll get an email request to join the listserv, and it's just perfectconnections@umn.edu, and it simply will get you on the email list, which you also then can use to contact anybody who has been joining us and whose email is there. So just if you get that, just a heads up, finding ways to make the resources that we share and our communication with each other outside of Zoom and about our Zoom meetings and that sort of thing a little bit more efficient. So who else has other questions for Ellen?
Yeah, I've got a question. I'm really curious. I'm like, wee. I'm super curious when you guys put your classes out for registration. Like when that goes live. Our stuff goes live August 11th, I believe. It might be a week later. So we are going. I'm just curious. I want to know, like, when are you guys going to know what your what your enrollment is going to look like? And then here's what I really want. I'm getting to the root of what I really want. I would love to have a link that goes directly to all of your community education pages where ECFE is listed, so that I can just dive in and look at what you're offering, look at your descriptions, look at how you're doing it, because right now we're just kind of doing what we've always done based on the fact that we haven't heard the governor's decree. But I'm really curious when you guys go live with registration.
So we went live with registration in April, as usual. So we already know that we have many full classes and many small classes, some of each. And so kind of also piggybacking on an earlier question, like we're in our brains just dreaming a little bit about calling each parent and saying, this is what we're offering, because we don't know what we're offering yet, really. We're going to offer some online, we're going to offer this, we're going to offer that, we're going to go outside, blah, blah, blah. What are you interested in? And seeing if parents drop off, like, no, I don't want any of that. Or maybe they want all of that, so we just kind of have to manage the numbers that we have, or maybe we'll have to say we can only have this many in a class, so we're going to have to re-lottery the class. I don't know.
In my district, we are totally the opposite. So we have done no registration, no planning with staff, and we're waiting for the guidance to come first. And then I think the idea will be a quick rollout of our current families from last year and some limited opportunity to get the word out to the general public, which is concerning. But that's kind of the opposite of what you had done.
And Trina, what is your school district?
Prior Lake Savage.
My dream is that we have about 5 weeks of beautiful weather where we can pick a green space, and that's where we do our ECFE for probably a shorter amount of time than we normally would, so that we can build connections and relationships and then go online. That's kind of where my head is going, but I haven't talked to any of my teachers or staff about that. That's just me dreaming up a perfect world of great weather in Duluth for the fall.
Has anyone else looked at the NCEA guidelines, and did you have any thoughts from that?
It didn't seem to have a lot of very specific guidelines. It was a lot of links, like follow this guideline, follow that guideline.
So there's a portion there from that they're giving 3 different scenarios. Mm-hmm. Everything with community ed, but they do have an early childhood family ed. I was just looking at it this week, and it was interesting. I mean, they had a couple of ideas that I hadn't thought about, but one of them was that you look at what you offered in the spring and just have those families that were already in a group, especially if you go into distance learning, stay in those groups so that they kind of know one another. And I thought, well, that I just hadn't thought of that. What do people think about that?
I don't know. I didn't have the greatest experience with distance learning, just having that little bit of time, and I'm really hoping that it'll be we're trying to reimagine it, and add some quality. And so I was thinking if we still couldn't come back in the winter, that would be a good strategy to just keep our groups and not rerun registration again. And we have a draft catalog that we're like just, I mean, Shelley and Karen know, like we're sweating it out. We're not sure if we're doing the right thing. Like some people want to, you know, there's this comfort level that's happening amongst our staff. Like, I just want to do all virtual. Well, I want to be all in person. And there's a little bit of staking out that opinion. And I mean, we don't get to just decide by our opinions, but my whole thing was, well, they told us they wanted a hybrid model planned out. So kind of that's what we did. We hope it goes live on August 1st. And we have our deadline planned for August 18th to register. So that's kind of our timeline right now. It's like sitting here in front of me, black and white, staring at me like, can we do this? Like I wake up in the middle of the night, like panicked, like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? But there's a lot of details to be worked out. But we have some virtual, some outdoor classes in person. And like you say, Jen, like we're praying for good weather. And if we can't, we will just move to online on a blizzard day or whatever, right? Like, I don't know. So that's our plan.
Do you always have a registration end date? You must register by date?
We do a lottery.
Oh, okay. So our registrations are like, you could, if there's room with the cap of the class, if there's room, you can register the day of class. So I never thought about the fact that like, we kind of have to say, if you're going to sign up, it's got to be by this. We've never done that before. And I don't know that we can, because it's all tied into community ed. I mean, maybe we can. So thank you. I hadn't thought about that, but it'd be nice to be able to say, okay, if we don't have enough registrations by August 18th, then we're cutting that class and we're going to reimagine it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. We in the spring, we did a lot of shifting. We added, we subtracted, so we'll see.
We also combined classes. So if the 8:30 class wasn't as full as the 10:30 class, then they went into the, either one. The other thing with that is that's the deadline for the first registration. Then you can register after that, but you don't always get your first choice. And some decisions aren't made until the week of classes. We have 3 people in a class. Are we going to run the class or not? Well, the number is really, we need to have 4, but there's this situation, so yeah, we'll run with 3, so some of those decisions aren't made until right before class starts. And parents would still have the opportunity to sign up on the day of class. That would be fine. So those options are still there if there's openings.
We were also thinking about doing, like you had mentioned, office hours, and we have a little description in the catalog. We're just going to call it Touch Points for Parents, and an open support group kind of idea where if they're registered for a class, they can drop in, but we're still going to have them register the previous day, because you have to send them the Zoom link and all of that, right? So we're trying to work through what that process is. If you want a drop-in support, I just like there to be as few barriers as possible for parents. And so your idea, Ellen, of like maybe that we put that for our parent educators, like they set their hour and they gather their own people's email addresses and they send it out themselves and can monitor how many people. I mean, in an ordinary quarter, we would have 400 participants. And so, trying to figure out like would you have 50 people come to your support group? I don't know. Like, so how to limit the number, and just those logistics are really getting us hung up. So we're trying to work through it.
If it makes you feel better, when I first started this, I started with 3 classes. So about 25 families. So I did like my Monday and Tuesday multi-age classes, which were both really big. And I said, hey, these are my 2.5 to 5-year-old classes if you want to drop in. So it was a small sample. And then the next time I did it, I chose my Wednesday, Thursday multi-age classes. And then I did it again for all my toddler classes, which were all smaller. So you can break it down into little bite-sized pieces until you kind of get the idea. I really, really, really would love to open it up to the community, but I am terrified that I'll get just swamped. So I think if I do kind of do a community one, it'll be only advertised on our Facebook page. And then we know it would be serving our early childhood, our ECFE families, our daycare families, our preschool families. So if you have a child enrolled in either of these 3 programs, you're welcome to attend this drop-in session. So you can make little pockets to
Yes.
control it. Just an idea.
Ellen,
I know my
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I know my audio's bad. I would just say yes. We have our district. I did office hours for just parents enrolled in my classes. Those are the people who I invited to my office hours. Our district also offers a individual parent ed, a sliding scale, hour-long individual coaching session, which is separate, and that would be for more like the general public, someone who maybe isn't even enrolled in the semester. So I definitely recommend being mindful to who gets invites to what, if you decide to kind of open yourself up as a general resource.
Yeah, we would only invite people who are already registered because they need that extra. Like we're going to have such short amount of time with our classes that we just think they need that extra something.
My question to Ellen was, I was thinking again about Melissa Schmidt's doing a Facebook Live event. And, you know, that is pretty much a one-way kind of thing, but you can screen questions or you can get questions ahead of time. What I was thinking about is like what we do with this is there's one Zoom link that I just have open for every time. And so, because Christy, I was thinking about, I absolutely agree of any kind of barriers that you can reduce, you know, so because when people get crazy stressed and busy, it's just like Tuesdays at noon and I have the same link. And I wish it could even be easier than that, but anyway. And so, so rather than the teachers having to create a separate Zoom link, I mean, could you just have like a drop-in Zoom place that is advertised? So it's like, here's the link for the drop-in. And then, but then it would be, if say Ellen was one of your teachers, that Ellen's office hour was like Wednesdays at 1 and Shelley's office hour was Thursdays at 2 or something. I'm just thinking, so something is constant. It's like almost like going into the building and you go to the same room, you go to the same library room, you know, or whatever, if you're gonna do a drop-in session to talk with someone.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I would definitely do that once there's a schedule, because summer, whatever, you know, like someone said, I'm on summer brain, but in the school year, I would make it an absolute, it's this time, drop in whenever you feel like it.
Yeah,
and it would be the same password. It would be the same code and the same password.
Yeah, this is super helpful. Yeah, I need to stop overthinking it.
It's really hard not to overthink anything right now, you guys. Like, it's hard to be a human who thinks right now. That's what I keep saying.
Well, and if you're good, then the technology will sort of push you to think more, you know.
You're in good company, Christy.
Yeah.
But isn't that what we have to do now, right? I mean, we have to be on toolbox brain. because we don't know what's up ahead. And so we have to just have like this little baby flow chart in our head of, if this happens, we go here. If this happens, then we offer this. If a parent needs this, then I do this. If my school district won't approve this technology, then I do this. If my parents don't have access, like it's all, I mean, in a way it's a good thing that we overthink things, because then that means that we're thinking of so many possibilities. And are being flexible until, because the nice thing, I mean, when things are consistent, then we don't need to be thinking, because everything is pretty predictable. It's just like, I know my building, I know my room, I know my students, I know my content, I know what I'm doing, I've got this down, but we don't, right? Because things are still up in the air and in the air. So what are you feeling good about as you look forward to the fall?
The wisdom of this group to help me be in the right state of mind for fall. So thank you.
And I think just the feeling of knowing that we're all in this together, and it's going to be, I mean, I don't even know what's going to happen. So it feels good to know that you guys are all there and you're going through the same stuff.
I know that once I get together with my staff, that they have been thinking about this all summer as well, and that they will have great ideas, and they will have, and it's still that time of year when staff are shifting jobs and just that kind of shifting. They're going to be dealing with having their own children in school. So there will just be a lot of need for staff to be creative and staff to be flexible. And I know that my group is totally capable of throwing something really great together. So that is something I know I can hold on to.
Great.
And that's going to be the first thing I say, to kind of tell them, like, I know that we can all rely on you and us together. Because we're smart and we can do this. Right?
We can do hard things.
A freeze on your
hard things.
Well, I know, kind of going on what Karen said, I'd be lost without this group and just being able to bounce ideas off of, because like this is the first time we've come together. It's kind of sad that this is like a crisis brought us together in this way on a weekly basis. But I am glad, because as the only one in my district, I'm seeing things one way. My early childhood teacher's seeing things another way. I'm sure my coordinator's seeing things another way. And so just being able to, bounce ideas off you, and then bounce ideas off her, and then bounce ideas off it's a good foundational base to start thinking about things. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I just really appreciate all of you so much.
Well, and I've been telling my staff as a whole that they are all parent educators. And so it's really been helpful that we've been talking about this for a couple of years in my staff group of, we are all here to teach the parents. We really get kids for an hour and a half a week. We aren't making a giant impact on the kids personally, but we're making the impact on the parents. So I might have to throw people into more of a parent ed role. And I think that they will be very capable of doing that and very comfortable doing that. So I'm thankful that we've been working with our early child teachers to be more parent ed minded.
Yep.
Already.
We actually had our early childhood teachers on our Zoom meetings with our parent groups this spring, and it was something we learned that we really liked, and it was very valuable, I think, for the parents and for us and for the early childhood teachers. So even through the crisis, you kind of learn, like, oh, we kind of like that, like this is a good thing. So
yep. Yeah, in some of the research, or I think one of the biggest insights that I've gained from doing the work with Parentopia and sort of the virtual environment and seeing what it offers that maybe face-to-face doesn't, was the ability for parents to understand more what was going on in the early childhood classroom while they were in parent ed. And that feeling of a stronger sense of connectedness with the early childhood teachers. And even I dare say trust, not that there was distrust, but just a greater understanding and a greater sense of sort of connectedness with the other children, because they could see their children with other children, learning at the sand table or playing or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I think that structurally our programs have a tendency of being really good, but it's also a bit distancing necessarily, because we are in different rooms, or I see it across fields and things like that. And so when we have these opportunities or insights or even crises that we are all in the same room, because for years, my thing working with teachers is that, is to help them have a better understanding of what parents are going through, what parents need. The parents need support. They need understanding. They need better communication if they're going to trust you, things like that. And that incredible role that teachers can play in being supportive to parents, right? But they're just not that they don't want to be, but they have, a lot of them just haven't been trained to be, so. Well, on that positive note about parent support and lending parent support across all, I had mentioned in my email reminder for today, I have to jump to a 1 o'clock thing because I'm holding a Zoom with somebody on a project, which I hopefully should be able to tell you all about more next week. But anyway, with that, I'm going to close out our session. Everything is being recorded, and I will upload it onto YouTube, and we'll meet again next week. So if in the week something comes up and you have a burning desire and would like us to discuss it, please let me know. But I'll be sending out that email invitation as well, so we have our listserv created. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This has been great.
And have a good week.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.